We now invite Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonzalez, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, to make his statement.
Chairman of Conference, my dear friend and comrade Roosevelt Skerritt, the President of the Republic of Guyana, also my friend and comrade, President Granger, colleague heads, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the people of the Caribbean. I want to begin, first of all, by acknowledging that a few days ago, one of the titans of the integration movement left us, Patrick Mannion, my dear friend. I want to adopt and call my own the remarks made by the distinguished Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago a few minutes ago. For to famous men, and Patrick was a famous man, all the earth is a sepulchre. His virtues are not written in stone at home or elsewhere, but in the hearts and minds of ordinary men and women across this region, and we shall remember him forever. For Patrick Mannion, the virtue of honor did not grow old. He, at no time, was in quest of the gathering of wealth. He preferred duty and service, to which he gave his life honorably. I shall always be inspired by my dear friend, Patrick. And on behalf of the government and people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I use this opportunity yet again to express profound condolences to Patrick's family and the government and people of Trinidad and Tobago. May he rest in peace, and may light perpetual shine upon him. There is abroad in the Caribbean and across the world, particularly the Western world, a sense of pessimism, a species of learned helplessness. We see it in the newspapers, we hear it on radio and television, and even on the pulpits where Christian redemption is that which we should embrace. But yet there's this sense of abiding pessimism. I do not share this view. I read in the newspapers in the run-up to this conference that CARICOM is comatose. Those writers, the authors of these opinions, do not take into account what the treaty, the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, is about, and the tremendous progress which has been made in the integration movement, despite the weaknesses and limitations in that very movement. and they fail to acknowledge the strengths and possibilities therein. CARICOM is not a federation. CARICOM is not a unitary state. CARICOM is not even a confederation. It is a community of independent sovereign states. And at Nassau in 2001, the heads of state and government resolved to establish a community with three central purposes: to move in stages to a Caribbean single market and economy, to establish effective functional cooperation, and to coordinate foreign policy. And Patrick Manning strove and added, and we added a fourth pillar, that of security. The only supranational authoritative institution created under the treaty is the Caribbean Court of Justice in its original jurisdiction. And that supranational body, through the Shanig-Myrie case, took the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas and the decisions of the heads of government of the community and made certain pronouncements which all governments are required to follow in relation to freedom of movement. Okay, so at the border, we have some problems with immigration officers. That is a problem to be solved. Not to say that there is not freedom of movement for up to 6 months, nor indeed for the persons with the CARICOM Skills National Certificate. All these things constitute immense progress. They did not exist hitherto. The freedom to establish businesses, the right to establish businesses across borders. And some of the very critics, if you ask them if they would like a federation or if they would like a unitary state, they will tell you no. If you ask them, should we have a single currency, they would laugh. If we should have a common currency, they will say no. But clearly, there are things which we still need to do to deepen the integration process. But let us not put on sackcloth and ashes and simply denounce all our immense achievements over the last many years. We have a way of beating up on ourselves too much. And then we find ourselves going to church on Saturday or Sunday mornings and sing, "Great is thy faithfulness." Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All that I need, thy hand had provided. But a lot of people who are saying this is not all that they need, it's all that they want. And many of the very critics do not want to put in a good day's work and engaged in pushing a life and an agenda of leisure, pleasure, and nice time, which no progressive society could ever be built upon. And rather than look to the politicians for miracles, what we should do is that when we go to work, we must produce. We must not allow the workplace to become a war zone. That is what we must do. But you have a mountain of words, but a lot of our people, a minority, but still too large a minority. And we need to work harder, and we need to work smarter. And there is nothing in the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas to prevent any businessman from investing in any other Caribbean country and to create wealth. The Caribbean, of which CARICOM is a seminal political expression, is a civilization, a functioning civilization. We have law and order. There's no state in the region which is a failed state. We have modern, sophisticated countries. So why don't we acknowledge these blessings, these mercies, and see how we can build upon them rather than beating up on ourselves needlessly? And what we do, we often don't think for ourselves. In the United Kingdom, there is hysteria over Brexit. So we have embraced the hysteria. Rather than saying, this Brexit contains within it possibilities, opportunities, and we must look for them, rather than to bemoan what has happened. That is not going to get us anywhere. And I agree very much with Prime Minister Rowley that we have to accelerate our work in the single market and economy. And in the process, we have to remember that we cannot accelerate this process in a way where we remain unequally yoked. In the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, in the preamble, it is acknowledged explicitly that because of the small size and extreme vulnerabilities of the less developed countries in the region, that special provisions must be made for them. And those special provisions are laid out in Chapter 7 of the revised treaty. But we have to make sure that Chapter 7 works, including to have a properly funded CARICOM Development Fund, as required by Article 158 of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. We need to look where we are and some real big challenges which loom. One of them is climate change. It is an existential subject. It's an existential matter for us. But while the 10 million people of the CARICOM community, and I say 10 million because sometimes people forget, 15 million, people forget Haiti. Some people, but we have to remember Haiti. But we must not think that this issue concerns us in the small islands or in seaboard civilizations alone. % of the Earth's surface, we have arid or semi-arid areas with about 2 billion people out of 7.4 billion in the world. And we notice that desertification is progressing, is expanding. From North Africa alone, it is estimated that 60 million people would migrate to Europe by 2020. So that when we have our challenges and we're looking for resources, we must bear in mind that we are not the only one looking for adaptation and mitigation resources. Which makes it all the more important that we function together, that we work closer with one another. We have before us a population which is getting older. We have to think seriously about it. In the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, between the intercensal period 2001 and 2012, the over 60 population went up by 30%, and similar numbers across the region. People are living longer. And in addition to the chronic non-communicable diseases of great importance, which Keith Rowley spoke about, we have to look at this question of aging, and we have to look very sensitively to the subject. It's not on the agendas. It is not because I am going to be 70 in August that I'm so preoccupied with this particular matter. But I'd be foolish if I were not preoccupied with the matter. Because that has implications for a range of social policies and also for the relationship with the young. And then when I am 100 years old, I have to figure out what is the nature of the sophisticated relationship I'm going to have with robots. The question of human-level artificial intelligence has immense implications for us. We are not thinking about that. By 2045, it is estimated that it is held that robots would be as ubiquitous, would be everywhere as computers today, performing functions which we perform in a normal way. How are we going to address those things? That is part of what we, as responsible leaders, in the community, political leaders and others, and the scientists, people in NGOs, we have to think about. And not to be consumed with the learned helplessness and the negativism. Look, we have made immense progress in reducing poverty and malnutrition in this region. Our housing is much better than it was 20 years ago, not to talk about 50 years ago. We are more democratic societies today, more open, more integrated, more transparent. And yet everywhere we turn is negativism and learned helplessness. I say we stop it. I say we begin to be very positive. And in being positive, we have to ask our young people, and in particular young males, we have to get them to move away from crime. It's an issue which also is of great significance. It would be remiss of me if I didn't say that the subjects of CLICO and BICO are still not resolved for the countries of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, and I hope that at this summit we will hear something about these matters. And so too, that we will hold our position, our firm position, regarding the treatment of persons of Haitian descent who are citizens or ought to be citizens in the Dominican Republic, but who are denied their citizenship on the grounds of ethnicity. We can't, in this 21st century, cave into any halfway measures or quarterway measures. We have to keep a position of principle. And what is required of us? It is laid out in the book of Micah: to do justly, to love mercy, some translations say to love goodness, and to walk humbly with our God. And as leaders, to be excellent in spirit, as Patrick Manning was. Thank you very much, and God bless us.